You know that free, open internet we all thought we were getting? Well, it turns out it's not so free after all. According to Anu Bradford's incredible book, Digital Empires, it's actually a global battlefield with three superpowers fighting to control your digital life. Today, we're going to break down exactly how this invisible war is being fought. So here's what we've got on tap. We'll start with how the internet's early utopian dream kind of fell apart. Then we'll get into the three big empires battling it out. After that, we'll hit the three key takeaways you absolutely need to know, and we'll wrap up with a look at the book's strengths and, yeah, its weaknesses too. Okay, so to really get what's happening with the internet today, we have to rewind a bit. We've got to go back to the dream it was all built on. You know, this idea of a world without borders where code was king, not governments. And this spirit, it was perfectly captured by this guy, John Perry Barlow, way back in '96. He literally declared cyberspace a new kind of global social space, totally separate from the tyranny of governments. His words. The whole idea was that the internet would just figure it out on its own, make its own better rules. Right, but here's the thing. That utopian vision, it just didn't pan out. And that's the whole starting point for Anu Bradford's book. She argues that the story of the internet isn't about being free from the state anymore. Oh no, it's now this huge, messy, geopolitical fight between states, all trying to force their rules onto our digital lives. So that's the big conflict driving the whole book. But to really get it, you have to see the framework she lays out to make sense of it all. And this is her big idea. This global fight is basically between three digital empires. Each one has a totally different rulebook for how the internet should work. You've got the US, China, and the EU. And what's so great about this framework is how it cuts through all the noise. It gives us three clear models. First, the US. It's all about the market. Let innovation and free speech run wild. Then you have China, totally state-driven, using tech as a tool for control. And finally, the EU. It's rights-driven, putting things like privacy and human rights first. And believe me, these models are constantly slamming into each other in the real world. Take hate speech, for example. In the EU, illegal. But in the US, it's often protected under the First Amendment. So what's a global company like YouTube supposed to do? Well, Bradford shows that YouTube's global policy actually leans towards the stricter EU rules. They're basically applying European standards to everyone, even Americans. And you see the same kind of clash between the US and China, but it's even more dramatic. In the US, tech companies pretty much do what they want. In China, not a chance. The state calls all the shots. A perfect example from the book is Microsoft's search engine Bing. If you want to operate in China, you play by their rules. So if you search for the Dalai Lama on Bing in China, you're not getting his Wikipedia page. Nope. You're getting a state-run website calling him a separatist. It's a completely different reality. And then there's the China versus EU showdown, especially on surveillance. China's model is all about using technology for mass surveillance, for social control. But the EU's model is the polar opposite. With laws like GDPR, they're building these huge legal walls to protect their citizens from exactly that kind of data grab. Okay, so with that framework of the three empires in mind, let's drill down into the three most important takeaways you really need to know from this. Yeah, this isn't just some abstract academic debate. Bradford's analysis shows how these massive forces are shaping your digital life right now. So let's get into the three big things you need to wrap your head around. All right, takeaway number one, and this one might actually surprise you. It's what Bradford is famous for coining, the Brussels effect. Her whole point is that even though the EU doesn't have its own Google or Facebook, it's sneakily become this global superpower when it comes to regulation. So how in the world does that work? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. The EU is a huge, rich market. Global companies can't afford not to be there. So instead of making, 5 different versions of their product to meet 5 different sets of rules, it's just cheaper and easier to adopt the EU's super strict standards for everyone, everywhere. And this just flips the whole script on who gets to make the rules, right? And check this out for a real-world example. Back in 2014, a European court created this thing called the right to be forgotten. It lets people ask search engines to remove links about them that are old or irrelevant. And what happened? Google has complied with nearly half of the 5.1 million requests they've gotten. Think about that. That's a court in Europe changing what people see on Google all over the world. Okay, takeaway number 2 is a pretty tough look at the American model. Bradford basically argues that the US's whole let the market decide approach has caused some serious, real-world harm, and its laws just aren't equipped to deal with it. And the culprit? The main one, anyway, is this little law from 1996 called Section 230. It basically gives platforms a get-out-of-jail-free card for pretty much anything their users post. Now, the idea was to help the internet grow, but Bradford says it's created a monster with, like, zero accountability. And she has this absolutely chilling case in the book to back this up. A guy used the dating app Grindr to go after his ex-boyfriend. I'm talking he created fake profiles and sent more than 1,400 men to the ex's home and his job. The victim begged Grindr for help over 50 times, and the company did nothing. And when he tried to sue, the case got thrown out. Why? You guessed it, Section 230. All right, the third and final big takeaway is basically a warning shot. China isn't just building this massive surveillance state for its own people. It's actively selling the whole package, the tech, the ideas, the model of digital authoritarianism to other countries, especially in the developing world. And this is the core of China's playbook, right? Using tech not to free people, but to lock down the state's power. We're talking about mass surveillance, facial recognition everywhere, and crazy sophisticated censorship. And if you want to understand just how real this is, listen to this story from the book, The African Union's headquarters in Ethiopia. It was built and paid for by China. Well, it came out that for 5 years, every single night, data from their servers was being secretly sent to Shanghai. And it gets worse. They did a security sweep and found microphones hidden in the desks and walls. Just wow. It's a really powerful, really convincing argument. But to give you the full picture, we've got to look at both its greatest strengths and some of its potential limitations. Look, every big theory has its limits, and Digital Empires is no different. It's an absolutely essential read, for sure, but it's still important to see the whole picture, warts and all. So the big question we have to ask is, does this three-empire framework really, truly capture how complex and messy our digital world actually is? Okay, let's start with the strengths, because there are a lot of them. First off, that framework is just so powerful. The whole US-China-EU model takes this super chaotic topic and makes it easy to understand. It just clicks. Second, her work on the Brussels effect is, frankly, definitive. She just lays out so much evidence, you can't argue with it. And third, the book is full of these incredible stories, like the Grindr case or the AU hack, that take these abstract ideas and make them feel incredibly real and urgent. But on the flip side, there are a few potential limitations to think about. For one, the framework can make these empires seem a little too neat and tidy. I mean, the US isn't just one thing, right? You've got California passing its own privacy laws that look a lot like the EU's. Another point is that while the book focuses on countries, you could make a pretty strong case that companies like Meta or Apple are now geopolitical players themselves, sometimes with as much power as a small nation. And lastly, you have to remember this is a snapshot of right now. Tech changes so fast. Who's to say a new empire or a whole new model won't pop up and change the entire map? At the end of the day, this whole battle that Digital Empires lays out, it's not just happening in some far-off political chamber. It's a fight for the rules that control your data, what you can say online, and your privacy. And as these giants keep clashing, the real question the book leaves you with is a personal one. Which of these rulebooks is going to govern your digital life?